when he taught me how to make biscuits, so this is what I'm gonna use. It's basically flour, buttermilk, butter, salt, baking powder. That's it. So you wanna use the best ingredients you can. So, flour-wise, I always use all-purpose organic King Arthur flour. If you can't find that or don't want to go to the grocery store and get it, you got regular flour, you can use that, but you'll need all-purpose flour. You're gonna need buttermilk. Whole-fat buttermilk, don't use low-fat buttermilk. This is not the brand I usually use, but they didn't have the brand that I usually use, so I'm gonna use Barber's today, and that'll be fine. Keep this in the fridge. You want it to be very cold. You're gonna need butter, and I use Plugra. You're gonna need 10 tablespoons of this. This is unsalted butter. You wanna use the unsalted because you're gonna add salt to the dough, and you don't wanna get salt from this. So this is unsalted. You're gonna use about 10 tablespoons of this, which is about that much. But again, keep this cold until you're ready to use it. And if you don't have Plugra, any unsalted butter will do. And then kosher salt. This is Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt. You're gonna need a tablespoon of this. And let me show you, this is a little hard to find. I get this at Costco. I've never seen it at the Publix or anywhere, but look around. This is what you want if you can find it. This, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt, okay? This is Morton's Kosher Salt. You see the difference? See how much bigger that is? Here, I'll put it next to it, maybe you can see, right? I mean, there's a pretty discernible difference in crystal size. So I show you that just to say, if you don't have Diamond Crystal and you have to use the Morton's, you're gonna need more. You're gonna need more than a tablespoon if you're not using the Diamond Crystal. How much more, I don't know. I would start with a tablespoon and a teaspoon and see what that does. Also, if you don't have buttermilk and you have regular milk, you can make buttermilk fairly easily as long as you have vinegar and whole milk. It's 1 tablespoon of vinegar to 1 cup of whole milk. Actually, what you want to do is, for this recipe, you're going to need 2 cups of buttermilk. So what you would do if you had to make it out of milk is you would put 2 tablespoons of white vinegar in your measuring cup, and then pour in enough milk to hit that 2 cup line, right? And you don't want to scant, what Scott Peacock will call a scant 2 cups, which means it barely is going to come to that line, okay? So if you're making the buttermilk with that formula, let it sit for about 10 minutes. It'll thicken up and you'll get a buttermilk substitute. You're also going to need baking powder. This is homemade baking powder. You can certainly use store-bought baking powder if that's what you have. This is, again, Scott Peacock's preferred method of what he tells you to use. And the reason is because this is really just 2 ingredients. It is a 1/4 cup of tartar, cream of tartar, organic if you can find it, and 2 tablespoons of Arm & Hammer baking soda or whatever baking soda that you have. When you use this, it's going to be important that you sift it. And the reason for that is because the cream of tartar, see how it comes through good, is actually thicker. And so you're going to want to get those mixed together, because what will happen is that cream of tartar will sink to the bottom, and so you'll end up with a problem. All right, then you just take that and you just pour it right back in here, okay? All right, now, what you're gonna also need, all right, so we've already talked about everything you need. All right, so we're gonna start with 17.5 ounces of sifted organic all-purpose flour. It's important that you sift it before you measure it. If you measure it, then sift it, you'll end up with too much flour and the biscuits will be heavy. So you need to sift your flour before you measure it. I use a kitchen scale and I spoon it in until I have 17.5 ounces. That's exactly what you want. If you don't have a kitchen scale, that's about 5 cups. But again, it's important to remember, measure it after it's been sifted. To this, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of diamond crystal salt and 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of your homemade baking powder or store-bought baking powder, whatever you have, all right? You're gonna want to mix this up with a whisk so it's nice and mixed up. And also, you don't have to do this. After I sift my flour into this bowl, I put the bowl and the flour into the refrigerator because I like to keep everything cold if I can. You don't have to do that, but I find it helps to keep things cold. All right, you want that mixed up well, want everything incorporated. All right. All right, now once you've got that, you're going to add in your 10 tablespoons of Plugra, and I've already got this cut into a block, but that shows you about how much you're going to use. There's a nice little measuring thing on the sides you can use to measure them out. What I'm going to do is cut this into 4 even blocks. The extra part that's left over, I put in a little ramekin and leave out at room temperature, so that when I'm ready to eat biscuits, I've got biscuit butter for it. All right, so this you're gonna cut into 4 roughly even blocks. All right. And then you're going to add these gingerly to your flour. All right. Now, then I cover those up a little bit. And then we're gonna do what Scott Peacock calls count the money. Now, what you wanna make sure you do is you don't wanna touch butter that's not covered in flour. So you're gonna smush this with your fingers, and then when you feel butter, you're gonna put the flour back on there, right? So you're gonna constantly, what you're doing is you're smushing flour into the butter and butter into the flour. So, and you're trying to create these little sheets. All right, you're gonna do that with all of you. Just keep doing it, keep mixing them around, and always make sure you flour anytime you feel butter sticking to your hands. You don't ever wanna get butter, so make sure you keep pushing it down in there and sheeting it, right? And as it breaks up, it's gonna get easier to do. At first, it's very hard because the butter should be very cold, because you want all of this to stay cold so that the butter actually doesn't start to melt until the biscuits are cooking in the oven, right? So this process is going to take a little while. And what you want to do is really use the fingertips. Don't use the palms. Your palms are hotter and they'll cause inadvertent melting of the butter, which you don't want to do. So, all right. But notice a lot of people, they talk about pea size. You know, you want little pea size. That's not what you want when you're making biscuits. What you want is sheets. You see this? Flat sheets like that. And you want to keep reaching in and finding big pieces, because that's what you want to mix in. You don't want big pieces. You want little fine sheets. You want to just keep doing it and keep doing it. Probably stop now. I think Scott Peacock would tell you to stop right now, but I get sort of obsessed with finding those little pea-sized pieces of butter and sheeting them out. Right, so you can see, there we go. We're getting them out now, see? Getting them out. Let's find everything. Oh, yeah. So you can see what that sort of resembles. You know, if you have pieces like that, just flatten them down. Flatten them, put them back in, smush them around. We're pretty good here, but this is kind of the consistency you want, right? You want to, when you pick it up, you want to see lots of little flat pieces in there, but Also, keep in mind, I'm showing you this, but you don't want to handle this too much, right? Because your hands are warm, and the more time you spend with your hands down in this flour, then the warmer it becomes and the butter will start to melt, and that's not what you want, right? So this is good. So, all right, so that's good right there. All right, now, we're gonna add our buttermilk. And like I said earlier, this is 2 scant cups, which means you want it to come right to the line. All right, 2 scant, and you're just gonna kind of pour it around in there like this. All right. Then you want a wooden spoon, and you're gonna stir this, and this is gonna be stirred a lot less than you think it should be. Just a few get to the bottom and kind of bring it over and bring it over and bring it over. You're just trying to get everything wet, right? That's why you want to go to the bottom and kind of stir it over. But you do not want to stir it too much, okay? That's it. That's all you want right there. And I know you're saying to yourself, that does not look like that is going to turn into biscuit dough, but it is. But this is what you want right here, okay? That is what you want. All right, now, you're gonna need some more flour for dusting things. All right, so I usually put a little flour in a separate bowl off to the side, and then let's get this as much of that off there as you can. Put this up there, all this stuff. All right, now you're gonna want to dust the top of this very, very lightly, and then I usually dust my counter very lightly. And we're just gonna pull all of this right out onto the counter, all right? There you go. And there's a considerable amount of stuff left in that bowl. See all that? Don't worry about it. If you try to get that worked into your biscuits, what you're going to do is sacrifice biscuit quality for stuff you don't need. All right, so now you've got a little thing like this. You're gonna kind of turn it, and you're gonna fold it over and smush it down again, and then kind of turn it, kind of fold it and smush it, and you'll see it's wet, right? That's what you want. You want kind of a wet dough. If it becomes too sticky, you put just a little, don't do a lot, you just want a little flour on there, okay? Little bit, and then what I do is I usually roll it out of the way a little bit, and then we're gonna flour your thing, lightly flour, because you don't want it to stick, and then roll it back over, and then start using your hands to press it out, right? And you start from the middle and work your way out, because you're trying to get a nice, even biscuit dough. Now, as you're doing this, you're gonna get some stuck on your fingers. If you can, you just wanna put a little bit of flour on the sticky wet spots, okay? Not a lot, because you don't wanna add a lot of flour to this, but you also don't want a lot of stickage. And see, I'm getting some stickage there. See how it's sticking, all right? And again, here's some other stuff over here. Don't worry about that stuff. All right? You're worried now about this. And you're gonna pat this out to about 1/2 inch maybe, okay? That's about 1/2 inch thickness. And some of your biscuits are gonna be thicker than others. Right now, You can wash your hands, or you can just scrub them like this over the sink, which is what I'm gonna do. All right, see? All right, now, next thing you're going to do is dock the dough with a fork. And we do this because Miss Lewis did it. That's who taught Scott to make biscuits, and this is what he does, and so this is what we do. People will tell you, well, release the steam or whatever. Doesn't make any difference to me. We do it because we do it. You flour it, and then start making holes. Every now and then you're gonna need to clean it, all right, or it's gonna stick. So put it in, dock, pull. Dock, pull. And you'll see how it's starting to pull up a little bit? You'll know when it starts to pull up, it's time. Let's see. And you want to get it docked all over. So you can see those layers are starting to come up a little bit. So you don't want that. All right, there. Now that is docked. And now we are ready. What you're going to need for your biscuits is a baking sheet, lined with parchment paper, which is what that is. And you need a biscuit cutter. This is actually just a round cookie cutter that came out of a set. I measured it earlier. This is 2.5 inches in diameter, 2.5 inches. You can make them bigger, smaller, that is up to you. Now you're gonna wanna dust this a little bit. And just like the fork, you're gonna need to occasionally clean the rim off, okay? But I start here, push straight down, and then pull, and it may or may not come. If it doesn't come out, don't worry about it. Come back for it later. Push it in and then pull. See, that one came out, and then you just want to let gravity sort of help it out, all right? You don't want to push it too hard. All right, same thing here. In, pull it up, and then let gravity, and you may have to nudge it a little bit, but mostly you want gravity. Ooh, yeah. And you're gonna have to clean those edges. As you clean the edges, make sure you dust. All right, boom. If you have one that falls out like that, try to get it. That's a good one. That's a really good sticky one. Oops. There we go. There's a good one right here. Right in the middle. That's a good one. And right here. Oh, look at that. All right, now we need to come in and get these. So what I usually do is get a little spatula. And this little offset spatula, kind of pull these extra parts away if you can. They're gonna be sticky. See how sticky that is? It's just what you want. And then you're gonna just kind of slide that in there. Same thing over here. All right, look at that. And then you're gonna put that right there. Now, these biscuits I will put in the freezer. And you can freeze those and pull them out whenever you want and cook them just like regular biscuits. What I always cook when I make my biscuits are what's called the leavings, and that's all of this great stuff here. So what I do is I kind of smush it together, right? Kind of get you, right? Little biscuits like that, smush them together. This will be a good one right here. See this big one in the middle? All right, kind of smush that. These are the leavings. You could re-roll these if you wanted to, but around here, everyone's favorite part is the leavings. This is what they want. This is what Lulu's gonna ask for when she comes downstairs, is the leavings, okay? So, there you go. Leavings. All right, there they are. All right, now, you should have preheated your oven to 500 degrees for the whole process. So by the time you get done with this, that oven's been heating for a good 20 minutes. All right, it's been about 7 minutes. Ooh. Here they are. The leavings. When you put your biscuits in the oven, don't walk away. Stay there, because in about 4.5, 5 minutes, you're gonna start smelling biscuits being made. And that's when you need to start keeping an eye on them. These took almost exactly 7 minutes. The biscuits that are in the freezer, the round biscuits, I've cooked those 7 to 12, depending on different factors. So you need to start keeping an eye on them. You might wanna spin the pan around about halfway through, but you gotta look at them. And this is what you want. Look at this brown, this right here, look at brown top, and then a crispy, crusty bottom like that, look at that. And then I let them sit here on the pan for just a little bit, because they're really still sort of becoming biscuits. There's steam and heat and stuff in there, but this is it. Scott Peacock, Edna Lewis style biscuits. If you have any questions, give me a holler. You can also find Scott Peacock on Instagram. He's a super nice guy. He will answer questions. He's answered a lot of questions for me, and I will happily answer questions for people too if you have them. But here, let me take one of these small ones so you can see. Ooh, that's hot. This, in my opinion, is the world's greatest hot biscuit opening knife. It's actually a tomato knife, and they have these. You can buy these from these little old ladies that sell heirloom tomatoes at the curb market, and I use it to cut. See how these kind of flake apart? Look at this. Look at that little piece. That's mine. And just saw that bad boy right open. Look at that. And you see the steam too. There you go. Biscuit perfection. All right. There are the frozen biscuits. They've been in for about an hour. They're nice and hard now, and that's good because now when you stack them up and put them away in the refrigerator, they won't stick to each other. That's why you do them on a sheet. Super easy. Get yourself a Ziploc freezer bag. Stack them up into a roll. There you go. And you're just gonna roll those up tight. Seal them up. Those will last in your freezer a couple of months. If you can wait that long, you pull out a couple at a time. We give these to Lou for breakfast. You cook them exactly like the fresh ones, 500-degree oven, parchment paper, 7 to 10 minutes. The only difference with the frozen is that the top is not going to get as brown as on a fresh biscuit. So if you open up the oven and the top's not brown, it's still a little pale, pick the biscuit up and look at the bottom, because the bottom's gonna tell you if it's done or not, okay? So the tops may end up being a little pale, but they'll still be cooked. The bottom is the key. Look at the bottom. If you've got a nice dark brown, golden brown in there, your biscuits are done. Pull them out, let them sit for a couple minutes to kind of finish steaming on the inside, and then you're good to go. There you go. Homemade biscuits.